Hey everybody, we're live. Actually at 5:04. So with all that, I said we started at 5:04, moving back. So here we are at 5:05. Here we are at 5:04, and I'm pleasure to meet my longtime friend, the legendary Oakland attorney, John Burris. John, how you doing?
Doing great, brother. It's a good day. Good to talk to you. Good to see you.
I know.
And don't see you as much as I used to, but good to see you whenever I can.
Yeah, same here. I'm going to make it a more normal occasion. I've just been getting my cyber act together, and uh, it's more than together now. But hey, you've been really busy, to say the least.
To say the least.
Uh, First, before we get into the specifics regarding the police chief, how is the Eric Salgado?
Salgado?
Yeah, the Gatto
Well,
case. Thank you.
and we're working on Eric Salgado's case. We're obviously in court. We've had one court hearing. We're now receiving a lot of the discovery in the case. That is the documents that the district attorney has. The matter, from what I hear, is still under investigation by the district attorney's office of Alameda County, but no charges have been filed, and we're kind of waiting to see if that's going to happen. Although we did not wait for the DA to make any decisions, we filed our lawsuit because I don't have a lot of confidence and faith in the terms of the district attorney's office, so I couldn't delay our activity waiting for a decision on the part of the DA's office. So there may be some efforts later where we have to delay, but I frankly feel that it's necessary to move forward. We've got to remember, I got a dead body here, and I got a very injured young woman, and it just seems to me that we have to move these things on forward before. And not wait for the district attorney to make their own individual decision, which we cannot control.
Hey, for anyone catching this for the first time, can you explain to them what happened? Very sad story. What happened to Mr. Delgado?
Yeah, Mr. Salgado and his friend, Brianna, girlfriend Brianna, they're a long-time couple. They have a child together. They're like 24 and 22 and 21, something like that. And they were out in East Oakland on Cherry Street, right off of 98th Avenue. And this was at 96 and Cherry. As they were trying to leave the area, several CHP cars pulled up on the side of them, one in front and two on the side. And as Salgado tried to bypass them, in his car, there was, when we gathered, no real indication that this was, they said we were the police, stop, if you don't stop, we're going to shoot, et cetera, et cetera. None of that was said. But then what happened, the police, CHP officers just opened a barrage of shots into this car. Well over 30 shots were fired into the car, and some from the front, the one front windshield, some from the side windows, shot those windows out. Some on the side of the car, some in the back windows, and some from the passenger side. Salgado was hit at least 18 times. His body was tattooed in the stomach area, in the chest area, in the back area, and across his head. Miss Brianna, she was hit across her stomach, over her left shoulder, and her left thighs. She hit at least 3 times. She was severely injured as well, but she didn't pass from it. He died, Mr. Salgado, and so we've been involved in it, looking at it from a perspective of the civil rights violation, whether or not there was reasonable efforts and reasonably necessary for the police to shoot and kill him under the circumstances. We don't think that's true, and we certainly don't think any shooting of her was justified at all. So we're in the middle of a civil rights case in federal court, alleging that Mr. Salgado's life was taken wrongfully, and that the shooting into the car in the manner which they did was unjustified and uncalled for, and that they never really gave the kid any type of warnings for them to surrender. So that's the case that we have, and we're moving forward on it.
They shot him 40 times?
No, they shot into the car over 30 times. He was hit, from what I can count, at least 18 times, across his chest and across his back. Some of those were entry wounds and exit wounds. So you had entry wounds and exit wounds on his chest, which means they were shot from rifles. These are high-powerful guns that were being used from a very short distance. So they literally tore his body apart. Just unconscionable.
What kind of mentality feels it's necessary to shoot someone that many times at close range?
But I think it's a reckless disregard for a person's life. These were his Latinos. I just think that there was not a respect for their lives, and that they didn't take any kind of precautionary measures to not to have to shoot. They didn't try to de-escalate, or they didn't try to move in such a way that they themselves would be in a position of safety, and because they didn't have to kill him, and they just made a decision spontaneously without any regard for options that were available to them. Now, we do know this, that one of the officers who was involved in this particular shooting was also involved in a similar shooting in Southern California. So we know that this is a guy with a propensity to shoot and to engage in this, put himself maybe in harm's way in order to shoot himself out of it.
What is it about the Alameda County DA, Nancy O'Malley, who I know, who actually is also a Facebook friend? So we're all Facebook friends, isn't it?
Yeah, we're Facebook friends as well.
Yeah.
Look, I view her as a friend. Okay,
yeah.
I do. I mean, I've been friends with her many, many years. So there's nothing personal about it. It's all about policy. It's about what your position is about a particular type of activity that takes place. And so, from my point of view, there has not been a willingness to closely analyze police cases, determine whether the officer's conduct was proper or not, or one that justified criminal prosecution. Now, of course, there's the Oscar Grant case, which I did many years ago. That officer was charged and charged with murder, but he was ultimately convicted of involuntary manslaughter. The DA's office is now, this Alameda County's office is now prosecuting another police officer. So, to some extent, to give credit where credit is due, she's prosecuted more officers, cops, the department has than any other department around. So, but there are a lot of cases that have occurred that I think merit police prosecution that have not taken place.
Yeah, and I think of cases like doesn't rise to the level we're talking about, but Messiah Ujiri, the president of the Raptors, when I think it's Mr. Strickland put his hands on him for no reason after the Raptors had beat the Warriors in in the NBA championship game, and he wouldn't even let him go on into the
that's the kind of a meanness, bias, power play on the part of very small-minded officers. Some of these officers are relatively power hungry. They use their positions to enforce commands that are unnecessary, but they do it because they have a badge and they have a right to make decisions, but they can be very arbitrary in who they enforce these policies against. And we have a lot of cases against the Alameda County Sheriff Department where they have dog bites and beatings and et cetera that we have dealt with, and a lot of poor beatings and misconduct in jails, in Alameda County jails, where we've had a lot of cases.
What is it, if anything, can be done about this in the interim, in the short term, with respect to elected officials, laws, maybe laws in the books that are not enforced? Why does it seem like it's happening so much? And
it's not happening any more than it's always happened.
Okay.
I think that what we have going on here and have been going on is we have video cameras and cell phones. So there's more transparency. There's more spontaneous recording of the officer's conduct. That has made a huge, huge difference. When I was involved in the Rodney King case back in the 90s, that was the first time the world had seen the level of brutality that officers engaged in in the African-American community. I was well aware of that conduct because I had seen that conduct many times before in Oakland. And so I knew about the police conduct, but I didn't have video cameras. However, since then, since Rodney King, we now have car cam videos. We also have shoulder videos, cameras, and now we have everybody in the world has a camera. And we've seen some of the really great misconduct cases that have taken place throughout the nation have been really about citizens using their cell phones to record what they have seen. That's huge. And I think that that's a level of transparency and contemporaneous conduct that allows everyone to see what police officers do. Not all police officers. I don't have a view that all police officers are bad. That's not my view. I think the vast majority of police officers try to go do their jobs. But there are those that are not. And sometimes the culture of a department can dictate how good officers do bad things, good officers cover up for bad things that bad officers do. But that's the culture of a department. And that's a big challenge that departments have. As you know, I've been involved in the Oakland Riders case for many, many years. And part of it, at the root of what we've been trying to deal with is changing the culture of the department. That has been a real challenge to get done. And we've gone through a number of police officers, and now we're getting ready to try to pick another police chief. We've had a number of police chiefs on this business this time that I've been representing it in this case, and we still haven't gotten it done, although we made a lot of good progress.
What do you think of the group that's being considered?
Actually, I think the group that's being considered for police chief is a pretty good group. I was kind of impressed. I've had a chance to listen when they've been interviewed. They had a town meeting last week, and I had a chance to listen to the interviews, and I was pleasantly surprised by all of them in terms of their responses and their willingness to give some acknowledgement and some insights in how they would approach the city of Oakland. The issue, of course, from my point of view, is I would prefer, given that we've had a number of years on the NSA, the Net Negotiated Settlement Agreement, and we haven't gotten it done, I'd prefer that the candidate that's chosen is an inside person, an Oakland person. And the reason being because I'm worried about the learning curve. Every time we bring in a new officer from the outside, there's a learning curve. That learning curve means they don't know who the players are within the department. And then they have to trust somebody to help them get through it. That person may not be a trustworthy person, or that person may have another particular agenda. We've seen that time and time again. So a person who's from the department will already know what's going on in the department and will have less of a learning curve in order to move forward in the case. Now, that's a good, positive thing. It's not the end of the deal, but it's a positive step, one that I would encourage. So I'm more supportive of internal candidates than I'm not outsiders, although I must admit that the outsiders were positive candidates. You had the man Lando from Pittsburgh, I thought was exceptional in a caring way. He seemed to have a sense of how to make sure you engage the community and try to be positive toward that community and bringing about a relationship between the community and the police. That is positive. Pittsburgh, I've heard a lot of good things about Pittsburgh. But Pittsburgh also was on the consent decree too, so they've had to work through their issues like a lot of departments have. And so I thought that he was good. The other person, Pridgen, from Seaside by way of Fort Worth, is obviously a very strong-willed person. He's a man, a go-getter, a take-charge guy. You can sense that he's going to do something, he's going to do it his way. I don't know that that's the kind of personality that you need right now in Oakland. This is a well-established department with a lot of different cultures, people in place. Although police officers they understand command. The question of whether or not you can get them to buy into what you're trying to get done, and or whether or not you can really get hold of, and this is for both of these guys, get hold of the NSA in ways that they can buy into understanding it, and then being able to lead men or women on terms of how to get things done.
And we're back.
Oh, good. All right. Yeah. And the other, so I think that the officer from Seaside is a very strong person who seems to be very creative, has some ideas, community ideas, but he seems kind of materialistic. in terms of how he wants to do things, which may or may not be positive here. It depends. We've had all kinds of chiefs here, so each one has their own individual style. And of course, you had Drennan Lindsay. She is from the department, very smart. It was very, very impressive when I saw her last week at the round table that they had for police officers by the mayor. She was positive. She obviously had been in the department. She's smart. She's working on a PhD. Has some real sense about activities that can occur within the department. I think that so she could do the job, of course. And then lastly, LaRon Armstrong, who had the most experience in the department and seems to me has the qualifications to work through the NSA. He's been more involved in that, been involved in it. And the NSA, I refer to, that's a very important, that's sort of a black mark, if you will, on OPD, that the NSA has been, negotiated settlement agreement has been going on for almost 20 years. I started this case in November, December of 2000. And so literally 20 years I've been involved in it, 17 years as the and part of the NSA. So LaRon Armstrong has been involved in that for the last 5 to 8 years in various capacities. And one of those capacities is dealing with the racial profiling or stop data and the integrity policing, all of which are important. For me, the big issues in this case has always been racial profiling.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The use of unnecessary force on people to have filing complaints and against them when they shouldn't be and having charges made. So a lot of work has been made on racial profiling. Racial profiling basically means Black people being stopped disproportionately than other people and for no reason. And so we've been working hard to bring those numbers down. And you understand what I mean. So it is important to me, as a person been involved in this case, to bring those numbers down. It is a scourge, if you will, against citizenship. If you as a Black person just get stopped just because you're Black, and then you have to answer questions about it, or then you have to have your person searched, or you have your car searched, or you get handcuffed when you shouldn't be handcuffed. These are issues that are very, very insulting and painful to the African-American men when this happens. And I've represented many countless people who've been stopped. Get out of your car, put your hands up. You try to explain, ask what you've done. You're not told. If you make any particular questions, you get handcuffed, sit on the side of the bench, get on the ground. I'm involved in a number of cases that are just outrageous. And I refer to them as small but big cases, because you person may not think it's a big deal to have guns placed on you or have handcuffed and wait, and then you get released. Well, it is a big deal. It's a big deal. Having guns put on you when you haven't done anything, or you having your car searched and you have to sit on the ground, and this occurs and you haven't done anything, and you have to go through the humiliation of watching that occurring. So
I can tell my story real quick. The one that involved, you remember Ralph Grant? And Ralph was my stepbrother-in-law. And yeah, so what happened was I was headed back from the Balboa Cafe. In fact, I was with former San Francisco Bill O'Keefe, and I was coming back by myself across the bridge. And for some reason, this dude was tailgating me. I don't know why. And I mean, really close. Don't know why. And I'm thinking, how do I get rid of this person? You know, if I change lanes, they were following me. It was really scary. So I saw a highway patrol officer in the middle of the lanes on the eastbound side, lower of the Bay Bridge, lower level. And I was trying to get the officer's attention, so I got in front of him in such a way where this other guy wasn't going to follow me. He goes barreling by me at estimated 80 miles per hour, because I was doing about maybe 68 or something. And I'm doing this, and I'm saying, get him, right? Do they go for him? No. But the minute I'm thinking, this is weird. So I change lanes. CHP follows me. And I'm thinking, okay. So then we get to the East Bay side of the lower area, get off. They lick their lights. I'm thinking, okay. Pull over, and I said, "Hey, officer, I got in front of you." He says, "Because I was trying to flag you." He goes, "Are you aware why we're stopping you?" I said, "Well, I know that I was trying to get your attention. I was doing 68." He goes, "No, you were speeding." And he says, "Well, we're going to check your breath. We'll just get you out of here." I said, "Okay." So I'm having my hands up like this, right? Now, I had already, a few months before, gotten a DUI in San Francisco for weird. These are weird reasons. These are weird. I mean, it's not like, oh my God, you're out drinking. I'm coming back from, in the first case, women's sports event at a giant stadium in San Francisco, right? We used to call Pac Bell, right? And so I'm getting on the bridge routinely, and they're working on the bridge. If you come on the Bryant side and you turn to merge with traffic, you do so to see oncoming traffic. I saw nothing but air. It was like Godzilla had taken out the bridge. And my first thought was, what the heck happened? So as I'm looking back this way, guess what happens in front of me? The guy stops. So I ran into him. Maybe about 5. It was like it was a fender. It wasn't even a fender bender because there was no fender bent. All right. We both, and the guy that I was talking to was notoriously honestly drunk. We both agreed we should call the police. So we did. We waited. They checked him. They let him go. Didn't even breathalyze him in recollection. They breathalyzed me. First time, nothing came up. Second time, nothing comes up. The third time, this dude's partner comes over. He goes, "Okay, cough it up." He goes, "Now he's over." He said it just like that. So I went to the jail, and Charles Bob, who I've known, turned out to be one of the people there. And he goes, "We're going to get you out of here." So I got out. That was but still, I'm getting a ticket for nothing, basically. Mm-hmm. So then this happens, and so I'm over. I'm thinking, really, again? And so I was like this, and because this kind of guy, tears started to come down in my eyes. And the dude who was the CHP officer, whose name I should get, was saying to his partner, well, like he's training him, well, so you hold him have him like this, you do it like this. And so I was crying. Tears started coming down my eyes. He said, "Oh, you're gonna do that, huh?" He took me and he body slammed me on his patrol car on the hood. He picked me up and he body slammed me. Yeah. Okay. And John, I've never had in my entire life an out-of-body experience because I had no control of myself. I had handcuffs, and then if I thought it would have been worse anyway. So I literally pulled myself. Listen to me. I literally pulled myself out of my own body to observe what was going on. You understand what I just told you?
You became very conscious about what was happening, right?
Yeah. And he put me on the hood. And I went to jail, was there for 3 days.
3 days?
Yeah. Because he wrote, "I delayed arrest" on the report.
Resisting arrest, right.
He said delayed. He didn't even write, but he said delayed.
It can be delayed too, yeah. How much time? So what was your bail?
$2,000. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so it was like, you put 10% up that and you're done, right? But that wasn't the issue. The issue for me was I was supposed to be out in 4 hours. Mm-hmm. But he wrote delayed arrest.
So that then you got a felony, you got another charge then.
Well, they didn't go to that level. When they tried to find me, they couldn't even find me in Santa Rita. Meanwhile, the other prisoners were saying, "You have no business being here. This is okay." They actually called and said, "He needs to not be here. You need to come and get him." Now, for no other reason than they were listening to my story. I was sleeping a lot. And I guess they felt culturally I wasn't the kind of person who should be in there. I'm serious. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't even be here, man. You're like, you should be out running something. That was their attitude.
All right.
So between that and everything else, I got out that Saturday morning after Thursday. Mm-hmm. So then Bill Dubois was my lawyer. Great guy. Had the officer come to court twice. He never showed up. And that's why to this day I want his name do a cop shirt, put him out there just to basically say, hey, you know what? I'm the guy who basically you tried to make a hood ornament of your own car. Okay.
Did you
And
ever find his name? Did you have his name?
no, I never. I was, in a different headspace then. But I told Bill about it very recently because he both agree you should get his name. I mean, yeah, I want the guy's name, and I want people to know that there are guys like this around who've been doing this. And this happens to everybody. Talks about Me Too and everything. That's my Me Too. I got, that's it. I have more than one. But the whole point is no one should have these. And think about it. Think about the start of the story. I went to him for help, right? Because all this hullabaloo over here that he started, the cop, meanwhile, you got this dude who was tailgating me who obviously meant some harm to me that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Had no idea what was going on. Just zooms right on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's not bizarro, and
it's bizarre. It's clearly bizarre.
Yeah, I don't know what is. And it goes with all these little, or some people would think are little, but really are not, transgressions that happen to us that build up into an officer thinking it's okay to put his knee on George Floyd's neck and basically kill him.
So these are transgressions that happen all the time. And in the city of Oakland, that's why we have the Riders case. That's why we've been trying to fight through it, trying to reduce the use of force, the use of deadly force, the use of stopping people unnecessarily so because of their race. And another area that I'm working on, very important to me, and that is the disparity toward African American officers in the department as it relates to discipline. I caused a study to take place to determine whether or not African Americans were being disproportionately discriminated against and complaints filed against them. And we found that there was a higher percentage for African Americans than other officers for similar offenses. This is a significant point because it affects, one, your assignments, your promotions, your overall career in the department. So if you get discriminated against and you get punished, that means you don't get promoted, where other people who may be just like you do get promoted. And so that's a huge issue as well that's come out. It's called consistency of discipline. And that was one of my major issues in this whole proceedings, to find out whether there was a consistency in the application of discipline. Well, we had to dig a little bit deeper, and we did find out that it was in the charging where the discipline problem was at. So you get charged and you get punished. Now, once you get punished, we found that the punishment was the same for everybody, but that wasn't the question. The question is, did you get found guilty for offenses at a higher rate than other white officers for similar kinds of offenses? So there are a lot of different areas that we have tried to cover in the NSA. We had 55 different challenges that we had to do, tasks, if you will. And so the new chief, we want somebody to complete these tasks. I've been involved in this case, as I said, a long, long time. We have to have 1 year when the tasks are completed, and then 1 year of sustainability. So it's always 2 years running that I'm looking at. So I'm trying to get these things done within a year. So then you have another year for sustainability. That's why we wanted to have someone in the department who knew what was needed and who could start the process now and who could properly evaluate. Plus, that person has to work with the monitors, there. And then you got to work with me and Jim Channon. And then you got to work with the political people as well in the community, because now you have a police commission. And that police commission has a lot of power and a lot of influence. So the new chief has to be able to work. I tell people who want to be chief, if I were talking, look, being the chief is more than being the supervisor of the police union. That's just one aspect of the job. You still got the political people you got to deal with. It's the city manager and the mayor. Then you got to deal with the people in the community, and you got to have some responsibility toward them and being able to balance all these competing interests if you want to be able to have a successful period as chief. And so you can learn, but it takes time. New chiefs coming in have to figure out the landscape of where they are. They got to figure out who these people are, and you don't know who to trust. And if you bring in your own person in, that may be good, but then that person got to figure out who to trust too.
Hmm.
So it's better if you can hire someone from the inside so that you can start fresh and you have a running start at the starting line as opposed to a running start behind the lines. And you got to catch up before, and it might take 6 months for that to occur. So, in terms of the new chiefs, I think I've told you all what I think about them. I certainly would prefer the chief from the inside who has some experience.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, last year, if I'm not mistaken, there was a problem where the African American Police Union, I think, wrote a letter about racism, right?
Right. Well, that was a function of the project that I'm talking to you about. That the officers were not black officers were not being recruited. They were being improper. They were being disciplined, at higher rates and different rates than white officers, and they were not unhappy with their assignments. And so there was a huge issue on recruiting. Now, the police chief that they had, Kilpatrick, was a problem.
Yes.
And then she brought this lady in from Seattle to work with her, and she was a problem. She was a non-police officer, but she was well versed in academic procedures. But she really was not attuned to black officers and the issues that we were trying to communicate in terms of the discrimination, the arbitrariness that took place in the recruiting of officers, and why some officers made and other officers didn't, or why there were no women in the academy where there were a few blacks in it, and why the blacks had a hard time getting through the academy more so than the whites. These were areas that we had real concerns about. And so the new chief will have to deal with these kind of issues.
Why is it that we seem to have this pattern where a white elected official, including the mayor, although I think Mayor Chavin's gotten better because I personally got an honor, okay, among others. But as I was talking to Libby straight up, I said, look, why are you going to bring somebody, and I'm sharing a conversation that was 1 point private, but I think it's important to share it, okay, these parts of it. I publicly wrote that we didn't have a black chief. We hadn't had a black police chief since, I think, Howard, right?
Yeah, Howard, right.
Yeah. And 2011, thereabouts. And Robert Bob Percy wrote me. He says that's the first time anybody had actually presented that point of view in history, which I was, hold
on. What did he say now?
He said that's the first time that he had seen in media anybody produce a history of police chiefs and complain that we didn't have a black police chief. He was talking about a media perspective.
Because we had black police chiefs now.
I mean,
we had Word. Word
right,
was a black.
Right.
Word. Joe Sanders before that.
Yeah. No, he wasn't saying that. What Robert was saying, it was the first time that he had seen anyone in media call out the current mayor. All right,
this current mayor. This mayor.
Right,
okay.
for not hiring a black police chief.
Yeah, because she went through 3 or 4 different chiefs. None of them were black.
Right. And the media had not pointed out. I pointed out a timeline of when we had black police chiefs like Richard Word, who was a friend, and others. So I wouldn't do my friends like that. Now, come on, man. So, all right. But that's what he was saying. And so, but my point is that to get to Libby, all right.
You're talking about Libby, right? I got you right.
Yeah. My point is that she told me that it's actually the monitor that hires the police chief and not the mayor.
That's not true. That's not true. Right. It's the mayor who hires the police chief. The monitor can fire the police chief, okay? Can fire them or recommend his termination, but doesn't hire the police chief. Is hired by.
All right, Libby, I had to bust you on that one, Libby. Sorry, but I had to get some clarification on that.
Yeah. Now, what's going on now?
Wow.
With the police commission now makes a recommendation of, they go and they do the interviewing and they bring 4 candidates. Those 4 candidates goes to the mayor. She then has to select from that group if she wants. If she doesn't want any of them, then it has to go back to the police commission to do more vetting and bring forth new candidates. But that's how it is now, that since the police commission has been present. But before the police commission, it was the mayor who made the decision. Now, she would consult with the monitor, but the monitor didn't get to decide. She got to decide, And if the monitor wanted to fire the police chief, he could do that. But there's procedures, things are in place for that to occur. But no, that's how it was.
How is it now? I mean, it's still with the mayor, right?
It's with the mayor, but the mayor takes it from the police commission.
Mm-hmm.
The police commission goes out and they interview and screen, and they bring it down to 4. And those 4 names are supposed to be sent over to the mayor for the mayor to decide. That's where things are now. Okay, they're waiting for the police commission to complete their vetting process, and once they've done that, they will send those names over to the mayor. Now, last week they had this forum where all police 4 officers were present, central chiefs, and I don't know if you heard that. Did you hear that at all last week?
It's on Zenny62 on YouTube. Yeah, I've got 2 versions of it. You can watch in full. Yep.
Okay, so that was last week. So now they gotta, if they haven't completed the vetting process, then they will send it over. But if they have not completed the vetting process, they will continue to do that. And once it's completed, then the 4 names will go to the mayor. She will then decide any one of those names to pick if she wants. If she doesn't like it, she can send them all back.
Why didn't she elevate LaRon to begin with? Because she had an opportunity to bring him up as mayor, as deputy mayor. She didn't even make him, the interim. She chose
there's something. I think it's because Kilpatrick, who really disliked LaRon. She really disliked him because he was an independent thinker, and she wanted more yes men around. And the police commission liked LaRon, and she didn't want LaRon to have that kind of relationship with the commission.
What?
And so she badmouthed LaRon to the mayor. And so the mayor had a negative impression of LaRon. And LaRon is the most thoughtful guy in the whole damn department. But the police chief, Kilpatrick, didn't like him at all. She liked more yes men. And frankly, she didn't like him because he was kind of close to me and some other folks too. So she felt that.
Is she racist? Is she racist?
That's not a term that I use. Okay, that's not a term I use. I don't use it.
Does she have a problem with black folks?
Just put it this way. I wouldn't say that's totally true. She had black folks in key positions. I think it was more a question of relationships than race. Now, her top people were white, but I didn't get the impression she didn't hire black folks for key positions. I just think that you had to be part of her wavelength. You had to be more of a yes person for her, that she had confidence in. I didn't view it as race, although others might have that view, but I didn't have enough of a close relationship with her to make that decision. I know we talked, and she was always cordial and very professional with me, but I didn't get the impression at all that she was fond of me. No, I wasn't fond of her either. But I didn't have to be fond of her. I'm trying to get this NSA together, and I hope that I wanted her to be consistently and get it down. Now, she had developed a very terrible reputation around being dishonest and being a liar. And people knew that. And so there was some luridness about her because they didn't view her as a trustworthy person.
How would you evaluate Interim Chief Manheimer in all this?
Manheimer seems to be more attuned to the issues, more willing to try to work through those issues. I kind of enjoyed her a little bit more so than I did Kilpatrick. Now, granted, she's an interim, and she wants to please. She wants to make sure that people are working are happy with what she's doing. She has a lot of energy. She's thoughtful. I mean, I will say that. So I've been pleasantly surprised by her. Others feel differently, but I'm not actively involved with her day in, day out. So when I'm talking to her, she's responsive.
And overall, will we ever see a day where Oakland's police department gets out of court supervision?
Sure. I might not be around.
Will I?
Yeah, I hope you'll be around. You're younger. You'll be around. I'm hopeful that that's going to happen in the next couple of years. I do. I think that will be a function of who the next police chief is, But I think on balance, everybody wants it to get done. They do. Sometimes you have these renegade police officers on the street who do bad stuff, and then they create a bad impression for everyone.
And by the way,
and that shows up in the data.
For those people who are new to Oakland, who may be watching this now and will watch in the future, explain to them what the writer's case is, how it came about, please.
Well, the writer's case happened back in 2000. It happened. The genesis of it was happening before then, but it's known as the writers because at least there was a group of 4 officers who arguably were riding around Oakland, treating people illegally, falsely arresting them, dropping drugs, causing them to be arrested for drugs by planting drugs, giving false testimony, and beating them up. And it turns out that this was a pattern that was taking place. These officers basically had taken their cue from Mayor at the time, Jerry Brown, who had given the impression he wants the streets to be cleaned up no matter what. However you do it, that was fine. And so these officers felt that they had a license to engage in sort of unlawful activities. And so a officer, Keith Batts, a new officer, was assigned to work with this group of officers, and he saw the mistreatment and he was appalled by it. So he told as a commanding officer about it, and they launched an investigation. And what turned out is that these officers were, in fact, treating people in the community horribly. And it was true that people were false. And so and this had gone over for a number of years. So a number of people were, in fact, in jail, falsely accused that they had lied about and caused them to get jail sentences. So we got involved in this case, and we represented 120 people, all of whom were victims of some way by the writers. Now, it turns out the writers was more than these 4 guys. There were other people who supported what they were doing or who participated at some level, but certainly did not turn them in. And so the writers is really 4, but it really was more than 4 officers who were involved in it. But what they did was just woefully illegal. Now, what made the case more significant is that we ultimately worked out an agreement. One, they got the men got $10 million or so, if you will. But more importantly, we worked out what they call the NSA, a negotiated settlement agreement, which was in essence a consent decree to look at the department and to identify where things went wrong, how the department can be modified, if you will, and to bring about change and for us to look at certain areas of concerns. As I mentioned already, racial profiling was a huge, huge issue. So that got the stop data issue. The use of excessive force was important. The manner in which cases were investigated by internal affairs was extraordinarily important. The citizen's ability to file complaints and not be discouraged from doing that was important. And also looking at the consistency of discipline. So we had a number of tasks, and these tasks really were to take a top to bottom look at the Oakland Police Department and see where things had gone wrong, and then see what can be done about it. So me and Jim Channon, literally working with OPD, rewrote the policies. We rewrote these policies, and we took them from the best practices that were around the country. We had expert witnesses testifying for us, and so that allowed for us to really do what a lot of departments have wanted to do. It was a consent decree by private counsel. All these kind of agreements were done with the Department of Justice involved in it. But the DOJ did not get involved here, so Jim and I took it upon ourselves to do it. And it took three years, but since then, we made a decision at the time to stay involved in the case to make sure it gets done. Nobody thought we would stay because we really weren't getting paid very much money to do it. And so but we stayed. And so I literally have been in a meeting with OPD once a month for all these years, sometimes more than once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times a month. So there's a lot of work that's been done and invested in this. We've gone through 2 monitoring teams that had the responsibility to oversee what the department was doing and determine and to hold them in contempt or compliance for getting it done. Well, unfortunately, all these years they have not got it in compliance. We've had a number of tasks. A lot of those tasks have been completed, but not put in compliance. And so it is an ongoing process. I am very hopeful that we're going to get things done. Now, it is true. We don't have as many police shootings as we used to have. We don't have as many mental impaired people being shot and killed. We have fewer people who are being wrongfully stopped, but we still have more than we should. We have a lot more willingness to look at things when they come up, because during the process of this, you may have remembered this, there was a strip search cases that I was involved in where African-American men were being stopped and subject to strip search. I was involved in representing over 45 of those people. Then we also had a case.
How did that get resolved, by the way?
Well, the statute, the policy they had in effect was declared to be unconstitutional. And we were able to get a significant amount of money for all the men who were part of it. We had another case that came, and I'm saying these are byproducts of the Ryder's case. The Ryder's case was the umbrella, but then what happened over a period of time, we started seeing other problems. And another one was a search warrant case. We had a number of people who improper search warrants were issued against them. And so that was another thing that came about. So we've had a lot of, and then another thing we've had at least 3 shootings where an African-American man, or the last case was white, who was asleep with a gun in his lap. The police came up and killed him. And our view on those cases, they should not have been killed. That they should have been an approach that was de-escalating, try to awaken these men, bring them to consciousness without killing them. So those are other matters. But
it was one of the gentlemen in the BMW off of Lakeshore, right?
Yeah, right. That was Harlem.
Yeah,
he was Harlem. And then we had one white homeless guy in another case that happened here. Mm-hmm. So, and then we had another case where a guy was just got out of prison. He had a gun, falling asleep, and he got shot and killed. So we've had a lot of these cases where we try to identify what the problem has been and then try to correct it. And we've been successful, but we haven't been able to, in a lot of areas, we've been very successful in a lot of areas. We have not been able to close this case down. And we've had 2 monitors, 2 judges, 8 police chiefs, 4 or 5 different mayors. I can't keep track of all of them. But hopeful. We hope to get a new police chief, that somebody could get on top of this, have some appreciation as to what the issues are, put forth a good management plan, assign proper people to various tasks, and move it forward.
Hey, I got to ask before we close, how is the pandemic affecting all this? Because on the one hand, we have calls to defund the police related to George Floyd. Then we had the pandemic, and now we have a seeming uptick in crime due to the pandemic. But how is that affecting what you do?
Well, I will say it's not clear yet. I mean, in terms of my law practice, it hasn't affected it much because we still got to practice law, right? Yeah. And you're not in court all the time, and the courts have made all kinds of. Zoom has been great for us in continuing to practice the law. Now, in terms of the community itself, there has been an uptick in crime, and there's been an uptick in burglaries, and that's people are at home. Mm-hmm. So that's been. There's been that. I'm not as close to the crime statistics because I don't do criminal defense work anymore. To be honest with you, I'm very much focused in on police brutality cases, as well as the Ryder's case of what's going on in terms of implementation. But we are looking at it closely. We haven't had an uptick in racial profiling type cases, but we are close. We are watching all these things close, and we had a shooting the other day. But we haven't had a lot of shooting cases. That part has been good. I'm really happy about that because in the mental health cases, I'm more of an approach to try to handle mental health cases because I don't like seeing people call for the police to help them with their loved one and the police wind up killing them.
Yeah,
which happens in a lot of communities.
Right, and that's actually similar to me trying to get help from the cops on the Bay Bridge back in 2006.
Yeah.
Right?
Trying to get help and you wind up killing them.
Yeah. I mean, that's bizarro stuff, man. That's criminal.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. John, in closing, is there anything you'd like to say to the new council members coming in?
Well, I would like to say to new politicians and the old politicians is to be forward thinking and positive, and remember what you're trying to get done is in the best interest of the citizens of Oakland. And that means sometimes politics need to be and political interests have to be put aside. And you got to think about what's in the best interest of everybody in Oakland. And we're doing the police thing. I only have one objective, that is to make sure that, to me, that African Americans and Hispanics are not treated differently in policing. I don't want them to be stopped improperly. I don't want them to be beaten, arrested, etc. There's collateral damage. So as a leader of the city, politicians, be thankful and mindful of the relationship between the police and the community, and that there's more than one side to all of this, and be careful and mindful of political interests that are just motivated by money, because they're not necessarily in the best interest of the people of the city and the town.
Well said. Hey, John, stick around in the background. Folks, thanks for watching, and subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube if you haven't done so, or follow me on Facebook, or follow me on LinkedIn, and we'll have more this evening. Stick around in